more on what the resignation of Boris Johnson means for us here in Australia. Let's bring in David McCredie, the Chief Executive of the Australian-British Chamber of Commerce. Really appreciate your time. Will changes at the top impact Australia's UK free trade agreement, do you think?
No, look, it really shouldn't. Thanks for having me on, Ash. I think the reality is that the Australia-UK relationship has been through plenty of challenges over many decades, and the transition of power from one prime minister to another really isn't one of those. We've seen the very swift change from Scott Morrison to Anthony Albanese across the political divide, and the Australian-UK relationship has survived that very well. In fact, it's flourishing. And even just listening to the Prime Minister speaking this morning about, that's the Australian Prime Minister talking about the removal of Boris Johnson as Prime Minister in the UK. He talked about a very warm discussion that they had at NATO only about a week ago.
Well, as you alluded to, here in Australia, we've been known to wake up in the morning with a new Prime Minister after a coup being carried out overnight while the nation was sleeping. It's a pretty different process in the UK, isn't it, in terms of what the Conservatives will be going through now to elect a new Prime Minister. But essentially you're saying it's safe to assume that once that process has been done, the new Prime Minister will be Australia-friendly.
Yeah, look, I think so. There's no doubt that the Australia-UK relationship is in the strongest place that it's probably been since the UK joined the EU or the economic community as it was back in the 70s. And the reason for that is that partly through the Brexit process, Australia's had the opportunity to sign a free trade agreement, which happened in December last year. We're still in the ratification process of that, so hasn't been implemented yet. But very keen to make sure that actually both parliaments get on with that business very quickly in the second half of this year so that we can implement it. It's really important actually that we implement that FTA before the end of the year because there's a double tariff, a prize reduction if we manage to get implemented before the 31st of December. But then throw on top of that, of course, the Australia UK-US AUKUS agreement that was brought together last year. There are lots of positive reasons why Australia and the UK right now are very close, and that will be maintained regardless of whichever Conservative winds up leading the party next.
Is it tenable, do you think, for Boris Johnson to remain as Prime Minister for potentially months to come? Wouldn't that put UK relations with foreign countries in something of a holding pattern?
Look, it's certainly not going to be a position that that anyone would enjoy for a long period of time. I don't think Boris Johnson would particularly enjoy it for a long period of time because he is somewhat of a lame duck. But remember that, of course, US presidents have a period of time from the election of a new president until they actually take office, where the sitting president's also in that awkward situation. And look, these things happen in world politics. Does it make a huge difference to the Australia-UK relationship? No, I don't think it does. Will it ultimately impact other bilateral relationships between the UK and other countries? No, I don't think it will. It's only a short-term issue. The reality is the UK is about to go on a summer break. And not much happens in terms of political processes or bilateral meetings over the next couple of months, or next month or so anyway, and that will give the Conservative Party a good opportunity to get through its process. It's a very openly democratic process to elect a new leader and be in a position to start the next session of Parliament with a new Prime Minister and ready to take on the challenges that are facing the UK economy and that are facing all economies around the world at the moment in terms of the challenges that are being brought about by the war in Ukraine, and energy crisis, inflation and other issues that are spilling out post-COVID.
So, David, as someone who's no doubt a close observer of UK politics, what do you see as Boris Johnson's legacy?
Look, I think the one thing he'll obviously always be remembered for is delivering on Brexit. He was the lead of the campaign to leave. He won that referendum. He then took on the role of Prime Minister after Theresa May to deliver Brexit. He went to the polls, as it said in the package. He won an 80-seat majority. I think he described it as a stonking majority. I think he'll probably also be remembered for his colourful language as Prime Minister. Certainly nothing dull about him. Look, I think that's probably the thing that he'll be remembered for most, certainly from an Australian perspective. He's always been a great friend of Australia. He's often talked about Tim Tams and Vegemite. And I think that from an Australian perspective, he's been a terrific partner and ally in terms of driving a closer relationship between our two countries. And I think that's the legacy that we'll certainly remember from an Australian end, I think.
And we enjoy a Prime Minister that appreciates Tim Tams and Vegemite, no doubt about that. David, really appreciate you joining us with your analysis. Thank you so much. An end of an era in UK politics.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ash.